Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to get relevant material and important updates. Hello everyone and welcome to Daily News Simplified, your one-stop solution to detailed analysis of current affairs published in the Delhi edition of Hindu newspaper. Articles dated 26th of July 2021 are listed on your screen, and the time stamping for these articles is already given in the description box. So let us begin with the first article itself. So let's begin today's DNS with this article. This article was published on page 7 of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper. And this article actually talks about a very important issue of fake news, which is not only a national issue now, but has become an international problem. Context of the article is straightforward. It says that current legal and technological measures may not be enough, and we are supposed to go beyond the current status. As of now, there are many stakeholders, which include the government, private players, online platforms, and even the citizen platform, to provide effective solutions and filter out the important and truthful facts from the fiction. See, the problem of fake news is not about how it is generated. The point is, what is the final consequence of a particular fake news? And that is the real issue. So if there's a rumor and a joke which is surrounding or which is circulating in the society, it is not a concern. But when there is an emotional attachment with a particular news or an event, it becomes a matter of concern. Given that situation, what we require as of now is to filter out what is right and what is wrong. And whosoever is responsible for generating that wrong information, also called as disinformation or the misinformation, should be brought to justice. So when it comes to the relevance of this article, well, General Studies paper 3 is important in this regard. We have role of external state as well as non-state actors in creating challenges to India's internal security. Also, it deals with the challenges of the internal security through communication networks. Well, this word can be utilized by the UPSC to make a question on fake news and the related aspects. So with that point in mind, we will focus ourselves towards the means-based discussion of this article and also a question attached to this. So the agenda for this discussion is straightforward in the manner of the issues which we are dealing with. As far as fake news is concerned, what are the international best practices which have been adopted in order to fight this menace? What are the national initiatives available? Of course, your legal and technological measures, and what are the other possible way forward in order to deal with this issue? After the discussion, you will be in a position to answer all the possible questions which are associated with the problem of fake news in India as well as in the international platform. So let's get started with the first one. Now, what is a fake news? Well, fake news, as the word itself says, it is a news. News means a deliberate form of information transferring from its origin to the targeted audience. The news here is not the true one. It is a fake news. It is a misappropriated news. The facts are wrong. The information is wrong. The targeting is wrong. And of course, the objective of generating this information is also unethical. Well, fake news is a news, stories, hoaxes created to deliberately misinform or deceive the readers. The basic purpose is to influence the people's view. Take the case of mob lynching. The generation of the fake news is about creating the emotional anti-sentiments among the people in order to take law in their hand. It also targets the political agenda in order to transform the ideology of the people towards a particular party. And of course, it causes a state of confusion. And of course, it can be a profitable business for online publishers. You must have read or you must have seen those sensational news articles which are taken up by the electronic media in order to take the advantages of TRP. So basically, it is down to the TRP war which we are experiencing in many nations, including India as well. The problem is that fake news actually affect the free speech. So once there is a large number of fake news generated in the country, what government will do, they will take stringent reforms in order to curb that fake news. But In that manner, they will actually target the real or the authentic news generators in the country. Apart from that, a fake news is also leading towards the hijacking of the democracy. See what happens that when a fake news is generated in the country, it destabilizes the political setup of a country, and with that, they also provide an ample space to misuse the power which is authorized by the constitution of a country. And in a democracy where people have right of freedom of speech and expression, curbing those rights can create the other dynamic effects which can lead to the fall of law and order situation. So, the best example which we have seen in the recent case is Russia. Well, Russia has been accused of manipulating with 2016 US election which actually resulted in the election of Donald Trump. Well, the allegations were that Russia used bots and fake news in order to trick the elections in the United States and, of course, some of the important events in the Western Europe. On the parallel side, what we have seen is that Facebook, which was actually accused or criticized for Cambridge Analytica data scandal, has announced that it will take a strong fight against the fake news and political misinformation with new controls intended to ensure authenticity and transparency among advertisers and publishers. An important report, which is the Freedom of Net report published by the Freedom House, gives us the insight of the international fake news events. The best example that they have repeatedly said is about the United States election, and with the US, they have also talked about other 18 nations where misinformation and online manipulation has led to the distorted results. They have also called that Chinese and the Russian regimes have been pioneered to use the surreptitious method to distort online discussions and even suppress the dissent for more than a decade. Well, this kind of dissent by the state goes against the freedom of speech and expression. And that is the thing which we need to learn upon. See, India is not the only case where we are observing a kind of political dissent or issues of freedom of speech. It is now an international phenomenon. Similarly, according to the report, there are nations like Venezuela, Philippines, and Turkey. They are among the 30 countries where government were found to employ an armies of opinion shapers. Well, this is a keyword which you can definitely use for the enhancement of your answer writing. And these opinion shapers are guided to promote a particular agenda against the oppositions and in favor of the government on social media platform. And lastly, the report has also talked about a case in Mexico where 75,000 automated accounts known as Penabots have been employed to overwhelm the political opposition on Twitter. Now see, when it comes to the main syllabus, we have a dedicated subsection which talks about state and non-state actors. So in this case, we can see the state is directly involved in promoting the fake news and the misinformation in order to counter their oppositions in the politics. Apart from this international and political setup, we have many other aspects of misinformation which is now being used as a weapon to create destability. There are certain forms like we have satire, we have propaganda, we have misleading or out of the context information, we have conspiracy theories, and of course we have clickbaits. Well, all these forms of fake news have been used in one way or the other in order to create a kind of distorted socio-economic and of course the cultural status in a particular period in a particular nation and to meet the unethical agenda. Well, all these have been manifested in one way or the other in countries like India. So, if a question on fake news arrives in the mains examination, you can have the following examples which are well established. Well, these are the popular examples which are used in India for fake news. They also talks about the most inhuman consequences of the fake news spread. The first one being your Muzaffarnagar riot, which actually led to the communal tension. Along with that, there was a fake news which says that UNESCO has declared Jan Gan Man, that is India's national anthem, as national anthem of the world. Now this is hilarious, and this was actually rumored on WhatsApp. We have that Dawood property worth 15,000 crores seized in Dubai. This was actually published by Z News as well as ABP. These news channels claim to be the best in country when it comes to the private one. Even they do not leave the president of the country, and they say that his account actually gained 3 million followers in just 1 hour. Which news channels? Republics, Z News, Times of India and others. Along with this, now let us look at what are the possible threats or the danger which is posed by the fake news. On political parameters, well, political parties try to gain political advantages by popularizing the voters' mind, which further intensifies the tension between different sections of the society. Political campaigning has progressed from mere appeals on the name of identity or the loyalty or the tall promises to something which is similar to the psychological warfare, and this is not at all good for your Indian society. So in that respect, you can use this point in your general studies paper 1 Indian society related questions. When it comes to the economic side effects, well, the first one, of course, being the loss of life and property, as we have seen in the case of Muzaffarnagar. It also causes the shutting down of the markets just because we have Section 144 and the curfew related measures. It also causes the breakdown of supply chains in the economy, because if one area of a country is affected because of the fake news and the social tensions, it will definitely discontinue the supply of essential goods and services. This is often seen in the case of Northeast India. When it comes to the social problem, well, fake news disturb the social fabric of the society, and the tensions among the communities persist for long. It may also lead to the violence between two or more communities, especially between the majority and the minority one. And lastly, it also reduces the tendency of cooperation between the community. See, once there is a communal conflict in the country, what we have is the lack of confidence. And this lack of confidence increases like a pandemic if it is supported by fake news. On the international platform, new arriving technologies like deep fakes are utilized by the countries to target other countries to create a political chaos. Lastly, when it comes to the media, well, it of course leads to the dilution of people's faith. It also calls for the loss of spirit of democracy, and ultimately, media is seen as the commercial entity. When it comes to the causes of the fake news, the most important issue is internet and the social media, which is now spreading like anything in the country. Many people now get news from social media sites and networks, and often it can be difficult to tell whether the stories which are circulating in the media are credible or not. The social media sites can play a big part in increasing the reach of these type of stories. Next come the lack of checking authenticity. So everyone right now is busy in sharing, liking, commenting on news items without even checking the authenticity of news. So if something appeases us, so if we like some video on the news and if it meets the emotional quotient of an individual, he or she is most likely to share it. And that is how the actual issue starts. Currently, India does not have an important code or any legal measure to regulate the practice of social media. Traditionally, we got our news from trusted sources, journalists, and media outlets that are required to follow a strict code of practice. However, the internet has enabled a whole new way to publish, share, and consume information and news with very little regulation or editorial standard. So, what we are reading right now on the internet platform may or may not be authentic, and there is no one to judge the writer. There is a stratified organization of fake news. Fake news is no longer being considered a rare or an isolated phenomena, but it appears to be organized and chivalry disseminated to a target population. It is believed that the high possibility of these organized bodies coming into existence with the help of political influence. And that is something which we need to focus upon. I have just listed down some international examples where state was actually involved in organizing and in fact stratifying the fake news. Apart from that, we are a nation which have socially sensitive population. So if you talk about a particular religion in good or bad manner, the other will face the heat of that. If you talk about a particular community, particular language, in fact, even people are so sensitive with the information that they can blindly trust the unauthorized and unregulated news which they read. We also have support from the state and the non-state actors, which we have already discussed. We have lack of tracing of the news. Well, being authentic and being traced are two different things. It might be a case where a news is actually a fake news. So authenticity is done. But what about the tracing of that news? That is the important thing. Who actually generated that news? Do we have ability to trace that, shut that down in timeful manner and to bring the culprits to justice? Well, that is a point to concern about. And lastly, we have backdoor support of media houses to sensationalize the news and capture the TRP. Well, this is one of the things which we have recently discussed in many of the examples where actual news houses were involved in promoting and of course spreading the fake news without even going into the details or the authenticity of those facts. Now, given all these causes, effects, examples, and problems, let us see what we have done by now. When it comes to the legal and the regulatory framework, well, there are many steps which have already been taken or which are existing in India. However, there is no separate legislation which exists in India in order to fight the fake news. So, Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution provides for the reasonable restrictions which can be imposed on freedom of speech and expression. Similarly, government also expect under Article 51A(h), which is part of fundamental duties, that every citizen have to develop a scientific temper. It means they have to think in a rational manner and of course adopt humanism and spirit of inquiry and reform. So, as a citizen of the country, it is your responsibility to go into and inquire about the authenticity of a particular news article before even spreading it like a fire. Press Council of India can warn, admonish, censor the newspaper, news agencies, the editor, and in fact the journalist if they have violated the journalism or the journalist ethics. However, social media is still out of the purview. We also have News Broadcaster Association, which is a self-regulatory body to probe about the complaints against the electronic media. Again, social media is not regulated. We have Indian Broadcast Foundation, which looks into the complaints against the content aired by the channels. So that also need to be considered. We have Broadcasting Content Complaint Council, which is also known as BCCC. It admits the complaint against the TV broadcasters. So if a news channel is going against or spreading the fake news, this agency can take the complaints. So Indian Penal Code under section 153 has been dealing with the provocation which may cause the riots, and section 295 actually deals with the insult of a particular religion. Beyond this, we have provisions in the Information Technology Act 2000 in which section 66 says that if any person dishonestly or fraudulently does any act referred in the section 43, which includes damage to the computer or the computer system, shall be punishable. And lastly, we have civil or the criminal case of defamation, where section 499 of Indian Penal Code and section 500 of the same says that whosoever defames another person shall be punished. So given these measures which are available in India, we also have certain other measures. So even at the international level, we have certain novel features which have been undertaken. Take the case of snobs, and in India, the social media hoax layer has formed the alt news, which is a platform or a forum where one person can expose the fake news. Similarly, World Health Organization has formed the information network of epidemics in order to reduce the fake news related to the current global pandemic situation. Similarly, we have International Center for Journalism, which is assisting the journalist working on the front lines of the disinformatic. Now, this is another keyword in order to ensure the accurate, trustworthy, and verifiable public health information. Facebook and WhatsApp have taken their own respective initiative to identify the fake news and in fact limit forwarding option on their platform. We also have many social media companies who are investing billions of dollars, such as on the technologies related to the artificial intelligence, in order to identify the fake news and also its proliferation. Recently, what we have seen is that Government of India has issued an important guideline for social media intermediaries that will make it mandatory for the platform such as WhatsApp and other to aid in identifying the originator of unlawful messages. Under this, social media intermediaries would be required to take down such messages within a specific time frame, set up a grievance redressal mechanism, as well as assist government agencies in their respective investigation to find the culprits. Well, if these guidelines are followed in letter and spirit, they will definitely help us to nab down the culprits who generate the fake news in the society. With this entire discussion, now we are in a position to practice this question. So the question is in front of you. I would request all of you to dedicate at least 15 to 20 minutes of your 24-hour schedule and try to write an answer using all the points which we have discussed. You can also use the points which are mentioned in the PDF which is provided along with this discussion. So let us now move to the next article for the day. This important article was published on page 6 of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the importance of planning when it comes to the inevitable extremities of nature. Well, India as of now is going through a deficit of monsoon as well as a surplus of monsoon. Now, this paradox is actually causing a drought in some areas and a floods like situation in many others. The recent flood situation in Maharashtra and many other Konkan states have led to the writing of this article, which provides the current status as well as talks about the importance of planning when it comes to the disaster management. So, the current monsoon season has given us a warning as well as an opportunity to prepare well on the disaster management with respect to floods and landslides. Well, what we are observing right now, which has already occurred in the past years regarding the state of Kerala, that because of the excessive rainfalls, the mountains are becoming prone to landslides. And because of the landslide, what we see that water, especially the rainwater, gets stuck in a particular area. And this stuck water actually causes flood-like situation. So what we should do? Well, with this article, what we are required to go through is the importance. Why we should read this article? Well, the first important being your General Studies Paper 1, where we talk about the important geophysical phenomena, including your earthquake, tsunami, volcanic others, and this also include your water bodies and ice caps. So this actually implicitly talks about your floods. And of course, we will also look into the disaster management aspect of this article, especially with focus to ARC recommendation on crisis management, which talks about the disaster management in the country. So let us start with the first one. Well, what the article has actually observed. It has observed that for the last 1 week, all India rainfall has been over 50%, more than what is normal for this time of the year. So in the end of July, the rainfall, which used to be a part of normal phenomena, has been 50% more than itself. Konkan coast and the southern peninsula have been seeing the instances of extreme rainfall. Now, why the extreme rainfall is occurring on the Konkan side? Well, the reasons are as follows. First of all, there is an accumulating of distinctive change in climatic pattern. So, climate pattern CC is now a new normal. And this is the most important cause for extreme precipitation situation in the country. We also have been seeing that there is a frequency and strength of the cyclones which are generating over the Arabian Sea are now increasing. And this increase was observed in last 2 decades up to an extent of 52%. Studies have also shown that heating of the globe has increased the atmospheric moisture, which has contributed to short and intense spell of rains. Now, normally we do not observe 10 to 12 days of cloudiness situation anywhere in the country except that of Western Ghats and Northeast India. And this has actually brought us to an important conclusion that the spell or the rain spell has reduced considerably because of the global heating. And lastly, we see that there is an interaction between the warming, rainfall, and the temperature in complex and variable such as aerosol, which is also increasing. We are also seeing the particulate matter pollution, agriculture, and forestry pattern, which are also important for this extreme situation. So, what are the consequences of all these? Well, the answer is simple: extreme events. Extreme events, which include your burst of cloud, and of course, torrential localized rainfalls. And of course, on the extreme side, we have prolonged droughts and the heat waves. So, both these situations are existing simultaneously. So, take this example. We are having a Lu kind situation in Thar. On the other hand, just few hundred kilometers away, we are having floods in the state of Madhya Pradesh. So Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan are not far distant from each other, but see the situation. And these situations are increasing year on year because of the climate change. Now, what is the current situation? Let us understand this through this important map. Map on your left side shows the IMD situation and data analysis of last 1 month. If you want to read more, you can go through the IMD website to understand. This map actually gives us the insight and that we can compare with what is the average situation in the country. So let us see this. So map says that there are about minus 59 to minus 20 deficiency of rainfall in the country. On the other hand, we see that it is not the case on the normal annual rainfall. So the deficiency is around the Tropic of Cancer. As you can see in the map itself, all the states in the red color are showing the deficiency which is as high as 59%. On the other hand, we see that in the normal situation, the deficiency lies in the western front and not on the eastern front. Now, this is what we need to learn, that in long term, what we are observing is that the extremities are increasing on those areas which are receiving more rainfall than the others. So, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya, and other states are experiencing more deficiency of rainfall than those of the western states. Similarly, the states like Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, and Uttarakhand, who are far away from your West Bengal and Arabian Sea, are receiving the normal rainfall. Similarly, we are having an excess rainfall when it comes to the southern and, of course, the Deccan states. And surprisingly, Kerala this year has received just normal rainfall. Now, why we are observing these things? The discussion has already been made in the last part. So because of this thing, we are moving away from what normal situation should look like. So normal situation says that the highest rainfall should be received in the Western Ghat and in the northeastern states. And the least amount of rainfall should be received in the western Gujarat, western Rajasthan, and northeast of Ladakh Union Territory. And because of this situation in the current scenario, what we are observing is numerous floods which are generating across the country, the best example being the recent in the Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. So what are the possible disaster management measures that we can take in order to fight this? Well, flood are going to increase in future. So what we require is mitigation and adaptation activities. We need to require rehabilitation, rescue, and relief measures at hand in all those areas which are flood prone because of the excessive rainfall. So let us discuss what are the aspects given by the Administrative Reform Commission. So these are the recommendations which are provided by second ARC in its crisis management report. So broadly, we require knowledge enhancement, awareness generation, and of course the capacity building. What will happen then? It will promote the risk reduction, quick response, and of course the recovery. We can create a legal and institutional framework which should dedicatedly target the floods. We can have hazard vulnerability analysis. We can have planning for risk reduction, capacity building of the community and the government agencies. Well, community in India is not well prepared when it comes to the disaster mitigation. We also require adopting the risk reduction techniques, installing early warning system like iFlows. We also require the financial instrument in risk reduction. Now what we can have? Government can have bonds. Government can have disaster management bonds in order to raise money to fight calamity. We also need to use trigger mechanism and standard of procedure to be well prepared. We also require immediate rescue and relief operations which are closer to the disaster prone areas. We also need to coordinate with the voluntary organizations, including your NGOs and civil societies, local bodies, and agencies. Well, local bodies like Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies are very poorly equipped when it comes to the disaster management. We also need to install effective information dissemination. Like whenever there is excessive rainfall, every person in the locality should receive a text message with a warning system. We also require monitoring and evaluation system. So when it comes to the recovery, we require planned recovery, rehabilitation with more sustainable livelihood. We also require integrating risk reduction features in rehabilitation measures, focus on the weaker sections, and of course, monitoring, audit, and evaluation. Apart from these basic recovery, response, and reduction activity, we also require other measures which were published in the National Water Policy. Well, you can use these measures for your mains answer writing as well. Now, what this policy has suggested? First of all, it has suggested for creating a master plan for the flood control and management. We also required flood cushions to facilitate the better flood management. Well, what does a flood cushion do? Well, they soak up the excessive moisture which comes with the flood. So whenever flood arrives in a particular area, flood cushions actually soak up the water and keep it hydrated without the excessive storage of the water. We also require physical flood protection works like embankments and dikes. We also require strict regulations of settlements and economic activity, especially in the case of urban areas. And lastly, we require forecasting as far as inflow is concerned. So whenever there is an excessive rainfall, every person in the locality should know that from where the water will flow, from where the water will store, and what are the possible dangers which can arise because of the flooding. Beyond this, we also have recommendations by the ARC on National Disaster Management Act 2005. Under this act, ARC has said that the crisis management should continue to be the primary responsibility of the states and not of the center. With this, the union government should play the helping or the supportive role. We also require a law that should cast a duty on every public functionary to promptly inform the concerned authority. So if it is the chief minister or maybe the sarpanch in a particular locality or mayor, they should have this mandatory to inform the concerned authority about the potential or the vulnerability crisis. They also talks about the punishment. So as of now, we do not have strict punishment when it comes to the flooding and the disaster management. And lastly, it also talks about utilizing the entry 56 of the union list to make a law and a mechanism to collect data, manage the flow of rivers, and release water from the reservoir so as to prevent the disaster from interstate ramification. Now, this is important. See, what we have seen in the past is that if there is a flood, let's say in Maharashtra and Karnataka, so who is going to suffer more? Of course, your Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So if there is a flood in Uttar Pradesh or maybe Uttarakhand, who will suffer more? Of course, your state of Bihar. And in order to protect this lower riparian state, what we require is that central government should step up and utilize this entry 56 to make a law and avoid these kind of calamities. Apart from these suggestions, the report of the ARC has given many other suggestions which we will take up in brief. Create awareness generation program, which is a keyword now for every general studies paper. We require a mitigation plan with consultation of all the stakeholders. We have to create more number of mock drills in the flood prone areas. We need to require environment management as an integrated part of disaster management. We also require prioritizing the buffer, flexibility and adaptability of a particular area which is flood prone. We also require to follow Sendai framework. Sendai framework actually talks about build back better approach in order to deal with the disaster management and reduce the loss of life and property. We also need to focus upon the urban flood management, keeping what we have observed in the cities and the towns of Chennai, Hyderabad, and of course Mumbai. We also need to empower and strengthen the existing National Flood Risk Mitigation Project. Under this, we need to empower relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and recovery programs. And lastly, we have flood management programs, which should also be empowered in order to provide the financial assistance to the state government. Apart from this, we have numerous other initiatives which we can take in order to reduce the harmful effect of the floods, which, as I said, are going to increase in the future. Apart from this, you can add n number of initiatives which comes to your mind, and of course those keywords which are good to gain more marks. So one of the keyword which comes to my mind is creation of porous cities. Another keyword is Japan model. So what Japan is doing right now? Well, they have created a large storage facilities for urban flood prevention. So whenever there is a situation of urban flood, so excess water will go into those storage tanks. Now those storage tanks are even larger than the 10 times of a football ground. And those storage tanks actually store the water whenever there is a situation of urban flood. Porous cities, on the other side, are those cities which have less or even possible the least concretization. The use of soil, the use of open pavements, more number of parks will help in soaking up the water and prevent from excessive storage of water on the streets. So these kind of initiatives are always open to prevent the flood in the monsoon situation whenever there is a skewed and distorted rainfall or precipitation system in the country, which is being observed in the year of 2021. Well, this discussion in mind, let us move to the next article for the day. This article was published on first page of Delhi Edition Hindu newspaper and talks about an important Telangana temple which has got World Heritage tag given by UNESCO. Well, the context says that Telangana's 800-year-old Kakatiya Rudreshwar, also known as Ramappa Temple, has been given World Heritage Site tag by the UNESCO. Well, the decision was taken up recently in the 44th session of World Heritage Committee, which is responsible for the final decision making on the World Heritage tags. So when it comes to the importance of this article, in the prelim examination, we have important events of national and international importance. So this article is important for both your national and international context. Even in the mains examination, this article can help you to write a good answer when it comes to art and culture, especially the temple architecture. So before even going to the discussion itself, let us see how far UPSC been proactive in asking questions related to temple. Well, temple from UPSC perspective is very important for the prelim examination. As you can see, I have taken just a handful of samples from the past year paper. The first question talks about Kalyana Mandapa, which is part of the temple architecture. The second one talks about the sun temples in the country. The third one itself talks about the Kakatiya kingdom, which is actually the kingdom in this article. So in the first question, if you want to identify the answer, well, the answer here would be Vijayanagara. Now, how to identify this? If you have ever read about Dravida architecture style, you would be in a position to understand that what are mandapa. Well, mandapa are part of Dravida architecture. And if you go through the options, you can easily eliminate Chandela and Rashtrakuta, who are not known for Dravida architecture design, not even in the composite manner. So you will end up in option A and option D. From these two, it would be easier for you to take a 50% chance. Similarly, in this question, if you had to take a risk, so I would say take a calculated and intelligent risk. The question is talking about sun. Omkareshwar is another name of Lord Shiva. Well, if you do not know that, it's not a concern. But Omkareshwar temple is mentioned in number of books published by the government, your NCRTs, and in fact on CCRT website. So if you know the names of major Shiva temple, you can easily eliminate and find out the answer. And the last question is related to your Kakatiya dynasty, which I will leave on you to answer in the comment box. So now let us move forward with the article itself. The Kakatiya dynasty, as you can see in this map, is depicted in this area. The capital city is Warangal. It is a coastal state and it actually dated between 12th to 13th century with other buffer period as well. When it comes to the Ramappa temple, well, it was named after its architect whose name was Ramappa. It was constructed in around 1213 AD during the reign of Kakatiya's empire by Rechalra Rudra, who was also a general in Kakatiya king Ganapati Dev. The deity, now deity is important in a temple. As you can see in this question, they've literally asked that which of the following is our famous sun temple. So sun here is a deity, a god. So in this case, the god is Rama Lingeshwara Swami, and the temple complex of this Kakatiya have a distinct style. The most important feature of this temple is the 6 feet high star-shaped platform. And of course, the pillars and the ceilings with intricate carving. Now, these are some of the features for which this temple have been selected as World Heritage Site. Apart from that, the important thing to notice here is that many important merchants, and in fact one of the traveler has talked about this temple as the brightest star in the galaxy of medieval temples of the Deccan. So this is how this temple is important. Now, apart from this temple itself, let us see what are the other important feature of Kakatiya dynasty. The most important being the gates which they used. Now, as you can see, these are the highly ornamental and decorated gates which were constructed during Kakatiya rule. As you can see, the stone which is used here is mostly black granite, black to grey granite. They also have animal figures and related structures. When it comes to the temple architecture, as you can see, these are the small plinth or the platform which are in the star shaped. So this is your one side, the second and the third side. The temple have mostly the Dravidian style of shikhara. There are no other shikhara in it or the mandapa which is seen in the Nagara style. They have dedicated pillars on the side walls of the temple. They have small windows which are opening into the Garbhagriha. So these are the basic features of the Kakatiya style of temple architecture. Now let us move to what Kakatiya dynasty is all about. Well, this dynasty was the fiduciaries of the Western Chalukyas. Now, Western Chalukya with the map itself shows that they were present in and around Telangana and the Andhra Pradesh. The important leaders include your Ganapati Deva and Rudrama Devi. Well, I know this is not the context of the article, but there was a movie which was directed as a biography of this lady ruler a few years back in South India. This dynasty was also known for using Telugu language for its inscription. Now, this also supports the view that Telugu language was in the practice for the masses. So, Warangal was their capital. As you can see, these are the artifacts which were found in these capitals. Important traveler, foreign traveler Marco Polo also made a visit to Kakatiya kingdom. Marco Polo or many other foreign travelers were asked by UPSC in the mains examination general studies paper 1. So you should read about these travelers in much more detail. So when it comes to the art and architecture, there are Kakadiya Thoranam which were built by Rudrama Devi's father. Well, these are nothing but the ornate arcs, and they have said to have similarities with the gateway of Sanchi Stupa. As you can see in this diagram, the gateway which I have just shown here are nothing but the replica, close replica of Sanchi Stupa's gateways. Similarly, they have 1,000-pillar temple in Warangal. And lastly, the Kohinoor diamond, which is famous for its historical importance, was first actually mined in the Kakatiya dynasty. With this, now I'll take you to the important question which is attached to this article. So as I say always, read this question carefully and answer in the comment box. And now let us move to the next article for the day. This article was published on page 6 of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the importance of military planning in countries like India. Well, the actual dealing of this article is in the synchronization which is required when it comes to the coordination between the different defense forces in India with special focus on Indian Army and Indian Air Force. Well, apart from the political aspect of this article, which is not a concern to the UPSC preparation, what we will focus is the role of Chief of Defense Staff and what are the current challenges in the country when it comes to the coordination and what we can do as a way forward in order to end those challenges. So let's start with the importance of this article from the perspective of syllabus. So from General Studies paper 2, so we need to go through structure, organization and functioning of the executive, because somewhere down the line CDS or Chief of Defense Staff is also directly associated with Ministry of Defense. So in that manner, yes, the role of executive also comes into the picture. From General Studies paper 3, we have various security forces and the agencies. So here we are talking about the defense forces of military and the air force. We are also talking about the role of external state and non-state actors, because at the end of the day, India is one of the highest defense importer in the world. Hence the role of state, especially the external state, also becomes important. Well, what happened in January 2020 was that the Government of India has appointed General Bipin Rawat as the first Chief of Defence Staff and, of course, the Secretary of a new Department of Military Affairs, which has also now become a part of the executive of the country. Along with his appointment as CDS, he was also given the task to reorganize the military within 3 years and promote the jointness and the restructuring of the military command for optimum resource utilization and coordination, synchronization, and promotion. However, the concern have been raised time and again that the decisions were taken with very haste and which could undermine the very goal of the government which it seeks to achieve. Also, there are reports of reluctance of the Indian Air Force to go along with the schemes that were proposed by the CDS. Now, we will not go into the political aspect of this issue, but in this backdrop, let us go through the challenges which are faced in the process of reorganizing the Indian Armed Forces. If you want to read more on the Chief of Defense Staff, well, I have taken up this in length and breadth in the article which was published on 22nd of June 2021, and I have covered all the prelims as well as mains important aspect of Chief of Defense Staff in this article. So you can go through that in order to understand the current situation and what is the current political position of this person. However, the current article would be like a sequel of this given article. So what we will do in this article is to read across the challenges and the concerns which we are facing right now when it comes to the defense structure and strategic dynamism in the country. So these are the following 6 challenges which we are facing as of now. So let us take them one by one. The first one being holding and controlling land and water is considered essential in an armed conflict. See, it is because of this reason Army and Navy see Air Force as an adjunct. As witnessed in the past, from Vietnam to the Afghanistan, air power failed to deliver promised result for United States. So based on the learning from which we can take from other countries, Army and Navy do not see Air Force on the strategic aspect of warfare. Secondly, we have aging aircrafts and depleting pilots. So as per the media reports, Indian Air Force is 25% short of fighter jets, along with shortage of approximately 10% of their authorized pilot strength. So because of this, there is already a depleted strength. Indian Air Force is concerned that further splitting of its assets between Air Force, Army and Navy can deplete the credibility of the force. Similarly, the views of CDS against multi-domain operation of the present are in questionable status. The idea expressed by CDS prevailed more in the World War II era, and it does not suit the modern situations and the requirements where integrated air-land or integrated air-sea operations are the norms. Presently, doctrine norms are shifting more towards the multi-domain operations, which actually fuse not just the traditional Air Force, Army or Navy element, but it also calls for cyber capabilities, spare warfare to disrupt the communication and enhance logistics to increase the depth and tempo of the operations. Similarly, the organizational challenges of CDS are on the rise. CDS is a 4-star officer And of course, being a secretary to the Department of Military Affairs, he controls promotions, posting, disciplinary matter, and has the ability to throw his weight around the service chiefs of different forces. Further, he, as a chairman of Chiefs of Staff Committee, also advises the defense minister, and that too on tri-service matter. Now, if a person who is from military background advises the minister on Air Force, won't that create a kind of gulf between the forces? Of course, it does. Similarly, the command which has been routed for now may deplete. Now, what does it mean? Well, government intends to raise the four theater commands, which include your Air Defense Command, Maritime Theater Command, Integrated Eastern Theater Command, and of course, Integrated Western Theater Command. Well, all these have already been covered in the links which I have shared in the comment box. So these theater commands will have respective commanders with a rank of Lieutenant General, Marshal, or Admiral, and will report to the Chief of Staff Committee, which is chaired by the CDS, in a compromising to the three chiefs, and it ultimately compromised the three service chiefs of forces. This has also created a kind of challenge between CDS and the service chiefs. And lastly, we have lack of national security strategy. Unfortunately, India is one of the country in the world which does not have this strategy, despite being a neighbor to those nations which have this strategy for long. Ideally, the changes which we have undertaken through creation of CDS should follow a clearly articulated national security strategy and be worked around a joint defense doctrine. So we also need a separate doctrine in this regard. However, in this case, the structures are being created to shape up India's national security doctrine. So instead of that, what we can have is a dedicated doctrine which should not only focus upon a respective force but should also focus upon all the defense forces, including the paramilitary and the central forces, in order to deal with internal as well as the external threats. Now, what needs to be done? Well, there is a need to have comprehensive national security strategy. We also need to require and transform the professional education and the inter-service employment, because in that case we'll be able to generate a sense of confidence and understanding between the personnels of different forces. We also need to resolve the differences among the forces themselves, and of course we require to have good quality staff. This can only be possible if we can have a dedicated program where we should focus on improving the capacity building as well as the inter-agency coordination among the personnels. The best example here could be the extension of Mission Karma Yogi, which was launched last year to promote the interdepartmental understanding and cooperation. And lastly, we must understand that what works for other countries may not necessarily work for India. So what we require is India's specific strategy to deal with the current security needs. Ultimately, what India requires is custom-made solutions which are based on comprehensive strategy. With this now guys, I leave you for today's DNS discussion. Thank you very much for being participatory, and now we'll move towards the question of the day.